Here with us today is Risa Groux, a functional nutritionist and certified autoimmune coach based in Newport Beach, California. After reversing her own Hashimoto's disease, Risa now helps others through functional nutrition, addressing a wide range of health issues such as autoimmune diseases, diabetes, cancer, and thyroid imbalances. She believes in the body's ability to heal itself using whole foods and focuses on identifying the root causes. Risa has also developed an online course. It's called Achieving Optimal Thyroid Health, aimed at helping individuals heal thyroid imbalances through targeted nutrition and lifestyle changes. She is the author of the book FoodFrame, Diet as a Four-Letter Word, a comprehensive guide to using functional nutrition to address health issues based on one's health status. So today, Risa will share her personal journey. She will discuss her book and explain her approach to healing through functional nutrition. So, how are you today, Risa?
I'm so awesome. Thank you for having me here.
Well, we're glad that you're here today, right, Dee?
Yes, we are absolutely glad. I loved your book.
Oh,
Thank you.
yeah. Oh, my goodness. I can't wait to talk about the book
Yeah,
because
me
when I
too.
opened it, I was like, well, look here. Look at here.
Let's
Yeah.
do it.
Well, first, tell us your story and how your personal journey with Hashimoto's disease, which is an autoimmune disease, in case people don't know, how doing this personal journey, your health journey with this autoimmune disease, how did it influence you to, change and do this the career path that you're in as a functional nutritionist?
Yeah, so I was always interested in nutrition, even as a little kid, because I grew up with a lot of food confusion. My mom was always trying to lose weight, and there was always a diet, and we're always avoiding these foods, but then we would eat them in great quantity when we weren't avoid. It was just craziness, right? It was just insanity. So what did I do? In high school, I just went on every diet that, every diet book that came out, and I was always trying to lose my 3 pounds, and it was just this terrible relationship with food, just punishing myself or rewarding myself or depriving myself, or it just was horrible. So I finally got finished with that, and I recreated my relationship with food and through a lot of education. But when I got married, we immediately got pregnant. It was like not even a thought. It was our honeymoon baby. It was like no big deal. I had an easy pregnancy. My daughter was born easy. Everything was great. And then when we tried to conceive again, it just wasn't happening. So I did everything I possibly could, and I just couldn't get pregnant. And then I couldn't hold a pregnancy. If I did get pregnant, would just really, really early on, I would just lose it. So it was super frustrating. I never had these issues before. So I went to a fertility specialist and basically told me, did a bunch of testing and said, you have an underachieving thyroid, and here's a script for that. And I'm like, well, what is this? He goes, it's a medication that you have to take for your thyroid. And I said, well, for how long do I take it? And he said, every day. And I said, no, for how long? And he said, for the rest of your life.
Mm.
And I walked out of that meeting and I had two burning major questions. One of which was, why is it that my thyroid is not producing the hormone that it was actually born to produce? And why is he not so concerned about this and wondering out why it's not producing? And I'm gonna have to now take a synthetic medication to mimic a hormone that I was actually born to create. So I left there and I started going through a list of why I would be have issues being pregnant and thyroid and everything. I discovered that I had this very common gene mutation that most people have. I test everybody for it, and most people have some form of it called MTHFR, and it basically is a gene that prevents you from methylizing or producing or processing rather your B12 and or your folate, your B9, and that can cause miscarriages and infertility. Who knew? So nobody ever gave me a B12, but I started to take the right form of B vitamins. I did acupuncture. I got pregnant, no problem. Kept the pregnancy, had an easy time, and easy delivery. And a few years after maybe about a year or so after I delivered my son, I went to a naturopathic doctor. They then diagnosed me with Hashimoto's, and I was like, what? Now my thyroid gland was being attacked by my own immune system, right? These antibodies were attacking my thyroid gland. And I thought, whoa, hold the phone. We got to figure out why this is happening. Why is my thyroid just going off the rails? And I could not at that time find any list of root causes that could be causing this. So I created my own. I put it in my book, FoodFrame. And I went through every single solitary possibility of a root cause. And of course, I had every single one. So it took me a while to treat each one, but I did it. And years later, I've been able to reverse my Hashimoto's, as you mentioned. But I went back to school when my kids were a little bit older, and I became a clinical nutritionist. I found functional medicine, and I love functional medicine. It really spoke to me because it is all about prevention. We do not treat you, until you're in disease state in our country, which is horrible. That's a bad paradigm. And functional medicine does prevention. We also look at root causes. So why is it that my thyroid is an underachiever? What is going on? Why is it that somebody would have headaches or chronic fatigue or diarrhea or constipation or a myriad of things, joint pain? I mean, the list goes on. So we look at the why. Why is this happening? Root causes. So I became a functional nutritionist, and I have been watching people heal for decades now.
Wow, that's an amazing story, right, Dee?
Yeah. So, Lisa, did you have any, as you know, a lot of times we are who we are, who we came from, any family history of any of this as you started this journey?
It's a great question because I started to look for that. My mom was on thyroid medication, and then I know both of my grandmothers on both sides were on thyroid medication, but I don't think they tested them,
Mm,
anybody, for antibodies. My mom was later tested for antibodies, and of course she had Hashimoto's
mm,
because a third of it is genetics, right?
mm,
And so she had it, but now I just found my dad's brother, identical twin brother, just passed. I saw his lab work, and he
mm,
had Hashimoto's, but he never knew. I don't think he knew he had Hashimoto's. And so it is, a third of it is genetics.
mm,
So much of it is also, a big portion of it is leaky gut.
mm.
So in our environment today, when we have so many toxins and preservatives and additives and chemicals in our food, it is really, really common for people to have leaky gut. I mean, really bad leaky gut. So that's another major root cause that I think is causing this epidemic of autoimmunity to rise, that and being tested.
Have your kids been tested?
Yes, both of my kids for sure. I always test them. Yeah.
Okay. So let's wheel back then. We keep saying functional medicine, functional nutrition. So what is functional nutrition, and how does it differ from the conventional nutrition?
That's also a good question. There's so many different ways that you can say conventional nutrition because there's a dietitian, a registered dietitian. There is, people who will follow a government food pyramid, which I think is not
A little
credible.
bit off, a little bit off.
Just a little bit, right? Just a little bit. And then, there's people who believe in low fat or low carb or low, whatever it is, their philosophy is that's basically what nutrition is, right? Functional is really based on 4 major pillars, right? All of which I work with in my practice. So the first one we talked about was prevention, right? Wait till you're in full-blown disease till we help you, right? We're going to help prevent it. We look at a little bit more narrow reference ranges. And I'd love to talk about reference ranges too, because that is such an antiquated system in our country. And if I were younger, I would absolutely be taking this industry on because it is so bad. But every lab reassesses their ranges quarterly, and they're moving the numbers depending on what's coming into their lab. And so their reference ranges are basically for normal. What's considered normal? Well, we are a sick and obese nation, so that is not normal, right? We want optimal. We're looking for optimal. So in functional medicine or nutrition, our ranges are a little bit shorter, more narrower. So we're looking at prevention. We're looking at root causes, as I talked about. We consider the body as one whole interconnective unit. So
Mhm.
perhaps the thyroid has a lot to do with something else. Perhaps your adrenal glands have a lot to do with your blood sugar. Perhaps your skin issues have something to do with your liver, right? In our medical paradigm that we have specialists for different appendages. We have a specialist for skin, and they treat it as an outside issue instead of an inside issue. We have all these different doctors, but we don't really have one doctor who treats, I mean, an internist, but they usually end up recommending you go to different specialists depending on what your complaint is. So in functional medicine or functional nutrition, we're looking at the whole entire body as one interconnected unit because it does have to do with each other. And then the fourth pillar that we look at is data. And unfortunately, in our conventional medicine paradigm, we are really predicated by what the insurance companies say that they will reimburse. So most panels I see don't even have vitamin D. We never see inflammatory markers on a test, which we know that inflammation is the driver of disease. Why do we not ever see that? I mean, that's like it's like the whole crux of anything that's going on, and we're not seeing that even being tested. I test for all 9 markers of the thyroid. Most conventional medicine doctors test for 1, maybe 2 if we're lucky, but I do all 9. I look at all 4 markers of the blood sugar. I'm looking at iron panels. I'm looking at white blood cells, and so on and so forth. So it's really important. So we get a full picture, right? I always say I'm not really good at playing darts with the lights off and I cannot see the target. I need to see where I'm aiming, right? So we order a pretty comprehensive blood panel. I also order a very comprehensive stool test because I need to know what's going on inside.
Okay.
Lisa, I'm sorry. Could you dial back with the 4 pillars? I missed the third one. Was that reference ranges? Was that a pillar?
The first pillar is prevention. Second is root
Root
causes.
causes.
Is the whole body is one interconnective unit.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so everything has to do with each other. And then the fourth one is data.
Okay.
Well, here's a good story when it comes to functional medicine. So my honey sweet, I always call him, my husband is a nephrologist, and so he had a patient. You know that when a lot of the uncontrollable hypertension patients go to a nephrologist. So he had one of his patients come in and he was doing his magic because he can do magic, to help with hypertension. And so, but she was kind of, it was kind of tough with this patient. And so she said, listen, I've been wanting to go to the Cleveland Clinic because they have a functional medicine physician. What would be your thoughts on that? He said, yeah, go ahead. Because of me, I've been hooking him up
Good girl.
on the whole functional medicine. And then because of me with nutrition and exercise science and all that kind of stuff. So anywho, as they say, she went there and the physician did a thorough detox. Come to find out that her hypertension, the root cause was through lead and different type of toxins. Yeah, from way back childhood, all just being And so he put her on, of course, food. With food is medicine and all of that. 3 months later, she walked in. Guess what? Blood pressure gone completely. Now, unfortunately, it does take, what can I say? Motivation. You got to stick to it, you know. So she was doing well for a long time and come and check. Everything was doing pretty great because that was his thing. Listen, we'll still check, to make sure. And so then, yeah, she started wavering back into some of her ways. And guess what?
You get what you get when you do what you do.
It's back.
Yeah.
Yeah. Isn't that, he was like, yeah, I have to give hats off. He said, now,
Yeah.
if we could just figure out how we can make it sustainable where people can do it. Her complaint was that a lot of the stuff that and the foods that the doctor wanted her to do, of course she couldn't find them because we're here in this area. In fact, for me, I go out of the area to go to get some of the foods, in Cleveland or Akron or what have you. And then some of the things you do have to get online. And that was her complaint. Plus, she had family. When you're trying to change drastically and you got family, all of this affects you as well. But hey, it's something with functional medicine, functional nutrition, and that's why I loved your book.
Yeah, and to her defense, it's very hard because we have so many options. There's poison all over, right? And I eat a lot of seafood. So I just checked my heavy metals as well when I already did chelation. It took me almost, maybe 8 or 10 months. I did chelation years ago when I was first diagnosed, and I got rid of all my heavy metals, but now it's back. And it's not back because I've been eating Doritos, but it's back because I only primarily eat seafood. I do eat a little poultry as well, but I really sustain my main source of animal protein is seafood. And it's in our water, so it's unavoidable. And I take a lot of glutathione, I do a lot of binding, but it's back. So it's really, it's something that we have to keep chasing because we live in such a toxic environment. So it's really a shame. But what you eat absolutely matters, right? And
What you
so
eat.
it's really important. And I feel bad because we have so much influence. I mean, when you go to you have a child, right? You go to the dentist or the doctor or the ballet class, they give you, or even the bank, they're giving you lollipops and all kinds of crap candy, right? It's just, I took my son years ago when he was young to the pediatrician. I think it was their last appointment. And, we're checking out and there's this big tub of lollipops. And she says, "Oh, would you like a lollipop to my son?" And I said, "Oh, we don't do any sugar." And she goes, "Oh, they're sugar free." So I said, wow, I wonder what they're sweetened with. Because they're sweetened with artificial sweeteners is what they're sweetened with. And they've got dyes and chemicals. And this is the doctor's office, the pediatrician's office. So it's so unavoidable, and it's work meetings and it's travel and it's, if you're stranded and you can't, you need to grab something while you're on the go, it's almost impossible. It happened to me a few weeks ago and I could not grab anything to eat. So I just didn't eat. But it was just, it's very hard to find real food.
Yeah.
Lisa, as I think about what you're talking about, I'm an infectious disease doctor, and I'm sitting here just my mind is racing because my theory is there is really no incentive in this country for anybody to be healthy because too many people are profiting off of everybody being unhealthy, including myself. And so when you were saying that you can't find any food or you can't, I mean, let's just like, I was looking today, there were wheelchairs stacked up outside for people, and they were like bigger and bigger. And I'm like, so they've got bigger wheelchairs now, and the dialysis units are all filled. And you were just talking about the sugar, so they have the sugar in the bank, and so there's no incentive because too many stakeholders and are profiting off of us all being unhealthy. I do want to just real quickly mention this thing about reference ranges and going back to Vicky's husband, who's a nephrologist. I guess maybe within about the last 3 years, I think, Vicky, you might have heard him talk about that. There's something called GFR, glomerular filtration rate. And so they were benchmarking everybody under the same numbers. And so instead of teasing out, for example, the African American population whose GFRs were different than other ethnic groups, which meant that if you just looked at the GFRs of African Americans and benchmarked them, a lot of them weren't getting picked up for renal disease early on like other groups. So I understand that's just another example of those reference ranges, which aren't necessarily for a lot of things aren't teased out. Not everybody's not the same.
Exactly.
I guess I'm trying to say.
And that's one of the major issues I have with conventional medicine is that they treat every person as the same, but it is not a one size fits all program. If that was the case, I would just put a graph on my front door of my office and say, you're an L3, I'm at the beach, let me know. This is what you should eat. This is what you should take, and you're done, right? But it doesn't work that way. We're all individuals. And yeah, I check an EGFR for every person. But every range, should be customized. I mean, not every single range, but you have to take lifestyle into consideration. You have to take, where you're living, right? If you're living near a steel plant or things like that, you have to understand those people are going to have a little bit of different makeup, or what you're eating, or, how you're living. If you're an elite athlete, your ranges are going to be different, right? So, and I do work with athletes a lot. I worked with one of the greatest all-time golfers of our time, Freddie Couples, and he called
Okay.
me and he wanted to lose 20 pounds before the Masters. And I was like, okay, great, no problem. So he came in my office, and I knew he was famous for back pain. Like, this guy has chronic major back pain. So I said to him, tell me about the back pain. He's telling me all these stories, and I knew he traveled with his physical therapist, and he went to all these doctors. I'm like, so where are the surgeries? And he says, oh, I've never had a surgery. And I'm like, you haven't had surgery before? I said, has anybody checked your inflammation markers? And he said, I don't think so. So I ordered up all these tests for him. He said, order whatever you need. And sure enough, we came back, his LPS, right? That's a major inflammatory marker, was through the roof. Now, this guy lives, both of his homes are on golf courses. He works on golf courses. Golf courses are treated with tons and tons of chemicals.
Yeah.
He's breathing in these chemicals day in and day out, right? At night and all day, every day. And he had all kinds of headaches and smell sensitivities and inflammation. And we were able to decrease the systemic inflammation through food and supplements. And next thing you know, he was completely out of back pain for the first time in his life.
That's a remarkable story. But we, Dee can tell you, that's why we love when you guys come in and interview on our show. We had one guy that came, and he had just a unique history. Remember, his name was Udu, and he was talking about, and we were like, huh? He was talking about how pesticides are in oil.
It's everywhere.
We were like, well, who knew?
Yeah. It's everywhere. It's so sad. Glyphosate is what it's ready Roundup. It's what they treat, right? For a pesticide, an herbicide. And we have it. I mean, every person basically has it because it's in our rain. It's in our food. It's in our water. It's like everywhere. So we're all, I mean, even if we eat pristinely and we don't leave our house, you still have it.
And they're carcinogens as well.
Exactly, they're carcinogens. And it was in my book, I don't know if you read that part, but the babies, they're testing umbilical cords, and these umbilical cords are up to like 286 toxic chemicals in the umbilical cords. So these babies are already starting out with toxins. And it's what we're breathing. I mean, how many times do you go to a place, a store or a restaurant or a friend's house, and there's this candle being lit, and, the Febreze plugins? I mean, you could just go on and on and on. We are just
all the chemicals.
started with all these chemicals. And, plastic. Let's just talk about plastic. How can you avoid? I mean, plastic is in everything, right? It's in your floss packaging. It's in, there's plastic everywhere in everything. So it's, and I use glass containers. I don't drink out of plastic bottles. I do as much as I possibly can, but it's everywhere.
And the dirty little secret is that plastic, those potential carcinogens, are eluting into the stuff that it contains. So, like, when people leave water bottles in the car, do not drink water out of your water bottle, because all this stuff is being eluted into the water and juices or whatever you use. I want to ask this question, that it's Vicki's question, but it must have been really daunting to figure out the foods and all. So how did you do that? I mean, did you take one food at a time too? I mean, it just seems like mind-boggling. How did you tease all this out?
So really what I did was I've been on every single diet and every single detox that's been known, that's on the market basically. And so what I realized when I first started my practice several decades ago, I kind of put everybody on the same anti-inflammatory eating lifestyle. And I realized that some people were absolutely thriving and other people really weren't. They were bloated or gassy or gaining weight, or they just weren't doing well. So I was like, well, then you need this kind of thing. So basically I started customizing it by accident, because I realized people weren't thriving and I wanted to make sure everybody was successful working with me. And so what I came to the conclusion after a while is my food frame. That's why I call the book Food Frame, and it's my methodology, because I now firmly believe everybody should be eating according to their current health status. So some people, if you have, let's say, SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, or IBS or IBD, right, irritable bowel syndrome or disease, you should be eating a low FODMAP program, right? Low FODMAP. FODMAP is an acronym that stands for fermented oleosaccharides, disaccharides, monosaccharides, and polyols. So in English, these are certain types of carbohydrates that will absorb water and create gas production, right? So those are the people like onions or garlic, which are super awesome prebiotic foods. They're great for immune system. They're good for your gut. But if you've got this bacteria that's overgrowing in your small intestine rather than your large intestine, it's going to wreck you, right? So that's specific for them. If you've got any antibodies, and it doesn't have to be just to Hashimoto's, to your thyroid or Graves' disease or whatever it is, rheumatoid arthritis or Sjogren's, you should be eating an AIP protocol. That's the autoimmune protocol.